Thanks for talking with me. What is your name and what do you do?
My name's Brandon Larrabee, and I am a Geographic Information Systems Specialist for the Bureau of Indian Affairs out of the national office in Denver. And I currently have been examining legal descriptions in something that's called a fee to trust application, and that's just a process of tribes applying to put land that they own in fee status into trust status, held in trust by the United States government. I also do some side work contracting for my tribe, doing restoration work at a chunk of property in the Coast Range. It's about 50 acres with about 20 acres of farmland and about 30 acres of kind of semi-intact wetland, and they've contracted me to go out and help restore the wetland portion of the property using some beaver dam analogs, or essentially building man-made beaver dams to kind of slow the flow of water and restore the habitat to what it would be like if there were beavers still living in the community.
What was your upbringing like?
Yeah, I grew up in Siletz, Oregon, a small town, with my mom. My parents divorced when I was about 2, and my dad lived different places, Seattle and Portland. And I'd spend the school years with my mom in Siletz, the fall, the winter, and the spring. So I grew up kind of enjoying fishing and spending time outside. And then I would go spend the summers with my dad, either in Portland or Seattle. So I missed out kind of on a lot of summer activities in Siletz, taking advantage of growing up close to the beach and the river, but I don't know. It's a small town. It's, I don't know, majority, but a lot of tribal people still live there. So I think it developed a real sense of community in me, and, you know, kind of instilled that sense of kind of being taken care of by the community, and in turn creating that desire to want to like give back to the community. And I think growing up in Siletz was a major factor in that. Gosh, a lot of people use the phrase of like walking in two worlds. And I guess I experienced that a little bit in the city. You know, it's a much faster pace. I was a kid, so I don't know if I'd say I had a ton of cultural identity yet, but you kind of just lose your identity in the city and become part of the whole. Whereas Siletz, you know, kind of that culture is built in and ingrained in your daily life, whether it's being outside or going fishing in the fall, getting sticks in the spring. So it kind of, I don't know, I think it impacted it a little bit. Growing up with divorced parents and my dad living, you know, away from the community and off reservation, I didn't grow up with a whole lot of cultural practices other than, you know, kind of a little bit of fishing and hunting, but gathering wasn't too much of a thing. And really kind of picked up some of those cultural practices after I graduated. I hate to say it, but like having a decent job really afforded me the ability to be able to go out and learn a lot of things, to be able to drive to places, you know, whether it's berry patches or stick patches or attend events. So it's probably only been like a 5 or 6 year journey for me, kind of getting into culture and stuff, but since then, it's kind of really shaped what I do, not in my job, but kind of extracurriculars. Like I mentioned, the contract for the tribe that, stems out of wanting to take care of the land and the plant communities. And, in the long run, the fish communities, because everything is connected and you start restoring wetlands and everything down will benefit from colder water, water staying in the ground longer. And so I think that's directly related to kind of that cultural identity of being kind of part of the entire community and not other than as a human.
What were you like in high school?
When I was in high school, I played a lot of sports, football, basketball, and then baseball and golf, and spent a lot of time with friends outside building forts. And, once we got our driver's licenses, growing up on the coast, there's lots of logging roads, so we spent a lot of time cruising logging roads and just driving out in the woods. And then, once it would start getting warmer in the spring, go up to the river and jump off twin bridges. But I went to a pretty small school that didn't have a lot of activities like wood shop or anything like that. So in terms of school, it was pretty much just classes and sports.
Can you talk about what you do for work?
Yeah, this is a tricky question. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and it is essentially a geographic representation of, the land, the earth, where things are in a computer system. So it creates a digital model of the earth or the globe, and then you can map things on it or show satellite imagery. It's very useful in analysis for restoration projects. Environmental sciences use it a lot. You can tell how things have changed over time. In college, I did a project with some sea cliff erosion mapping, where we looked at satellite imagery from the late 90s compared to satellite imagery from today, and we were able to take measurements with how far the cliff has retreated in areas. Something a little more common that everyone's used to using GIS. Most people have phones that have Apple Maps or Google Maps, and that is essentially a GIS that takes where you are on the earth and where you want to be and runs an analysis to create the shortest distance or drive time to get you there.
How would you describe your career journey?
Yeah, mine was definitely, I don't want to say by chance, but it kind of seemed like things fell into place. I kind of didn't really know what the plan was after I graduated. I kind of thought maybe I could go back to Siletz and work for my tribe. But I ended up getting a call, or I applied for an internship with the Bureau of Indian Affairs for the summer after I graduated. And a couple weeks later, I got a letter or an email that said, I didn't get the internship because I was graduating that year. And so I was kind of bummed out about that, but, still had the option to go intern with my tribe back home. And I think it was a couple weeks after that, 2 or 3 weeks before we graduated, I got a call from a Washington, D.C. number, and it was someone with the Bureau of Indian Affairs that basically said they saw my resume when I applied for that, and that even though I wasn't eligible because I was no longer a student, they were interested in, kind of hiring me at some point when they could find a position for me. So asked if I could just kind of hold off a little bit and see what happened. And so I went back to Siletz for the summer and worked with my tribe, working in the Healthy Traditions Department and behavioral health, working with youth. We did a lot of trips, getting them out onto the land at a couple places in Southern Oregon, and some rafting trips on the Mackenzie. And then, a couple months into that, I got a call from the woman in DC again that said, this position opened up, we'd like you to apply for it. We think you'd be a good candidate. And I applied for it and ended up, getting hired. And, I've been with the BIA, I think, for the last 2.5 years now. I'm also the chairman on the tribe's education committee, and we basically meet about once a month to discuss things that are going on in the education landscape, all the way from kindergarten up to college. And we discuss these things as a committee and then make recommendation and reports to tribal council. And I've been on the education committee for about 2 years now. One of the major things we do is provide scholarships for tribal members. And this last year we awarded $17,000 to students pursuing higher education. So that's kind of something cool that I do. And also just became a board member on the Midcoast Watershed Council, which is an organization based out of Newport that does education, outreach, and restoration projects with community, landowners, and other stakeholders that fall within that watershed in order to, restore the health of our rivers. And then I also am part of a group called the Indigenous Gardens Network, which is, it's kind of an intergovernmental organization, I guess you would call it. It is the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Round Indians. And we are working together with some interested partners in Southern Oregon, which are like land conservancies and Southern Oregon University, essentially to restore, these plant communities that were so important to both of our tribes' peoples. It's both of our tribes because we both share homelands down there, so we're working together to gain access to those lands and restore those food sources, those first foods that our people have been eating for thousands of years. And that has been going on for about 2 years now.
What values are important to you personally?
I don't want to overly generalize, but I think as tribal people, throughout history, we've been a very place-based people, connected to the land where we come from. A lot of our origin stories for different tribes, express the people just coming out of the land right where they had been for thousands of years. And our tribes, we were removed back in the 1800s, and we lost that connection to our homelands, where our great-grandparents and our great uncles and great aunties are buried down there still today. we lost that connection when we were moved up to the reservation. And it's hard for a lot of people in the community to get down there. It's expensive, it's a long trip. There's not a lot of tribal members that live down there that could provide places to stay, So when you think of these expenses, you got to think of hotel rooms and meals for families. So, it's a connection that's been lost, that connection to place, to our homelands. And I don't know, for me, like, kind of learning my cultural identity has done the most for, I think, like, my spirit, my mental health, and just like kind of knowing who I am and where I fit in the world. So, it's really important to give that back to our other tribal community members, if we can, and just get them back down onto that land and, put their hands in the dirt and mix the DNAs of our people in those plant communities again. And that's important to us as tribal people, but I think just the broader community, even like having that connection to the place where you're from, I think it could benefit, the whole society to take care of the land that takes care of us. I know we don't see it a lot today because all our food comes from stores and in boxes and plastic, but everything that we use comes from the earth. And so I think just creating that place-based connection in our own tribal communities as well as the community at large is just like such an important step to kind of healing the earth and the society as whole.
What advice do you have for students trying to figure out what they want to do later in life?
Probably just keep at it, I think life is, it's short, but it's also a very long time. So, you could have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 careers in your life. So I guess whatever you do, just keep at it, and don't be afraid to make changes. I went back to college at 24 and got my degree at 29. So if you don't know what you want to do right out of high school, that's okay too, I would just say there's no one right or wrong path in life. Just whatever you do, try and be happy and take care of the people around you.